Hey everyone, and welcome to another deep dive. This time we're going to dig into a topic I'm really excited about. Photographic equipment assemblers. Our listener sent in a really thorough guide, and it's in recently updated December 2023, so we know we're looking at the latest info.
It's exciting stuff.
It is, it is. And, I have to admit, when I hear photographic equipment assembler, I kind of picture, someone in a lab coat with like a magnifying glass, carefully putting together tiny little camera parts. Is that anything close to reality anymore, or has digital tech, AI, changed all that?
Well, you're not wrong about the precision aspect. It absolutely is a job that requires a lot of meticulous work and a steady hand. But you're right, things have evolved a lot, particularly as technology has advanced.
So it's not just like putting the same lens together over and over.
Not at all. I mean, we're talking about complex optical systems, super advanced electronics, like the image sensors that capture everything, and of course, the intricate mechanics that make it all work together. They're not just screwing things together, they're calibrating lenses to like a micrometer's precision, making sure the image sensor integrates perfectly with the software. It's really quite impressive.
I'm already getting a whole new appreciation for the cameras we use, even just our phones. It's not just point and shoot.
Not anymore. And that's part of what makes this career path so interesting. Plus, there's a variety of places you could end up. Sure, there are the big manufacturing plants, but you also have research and development labs, even freelance work.
So you could be working on a prototype for the next big camera.
Exactly.
That does sound pretty cool, I have to admit. But I imagine, like any job, it's got its pluses and minuses. What does the guide say about the day-to-day?
Well, one thing that stood out to me is the potential for repetitive tasks, particularly in those large-scale manufacturing settings. So spending hours on a very specific component, making sure it meets very exacting standards that can be a bit monotonous for some people.
Yeah, I can see how that wouldn't be for everyone. But then on the flip side, you're working with the newest tech.
You hit the nail on the head. That's a huge draw for a lot of people. Being at the forefront of the latest camera tech, new lenses, the newest imaging technology, that's exciting. You're always learning. Plus, there's the satisfaction of knowing you're building something tangible, something that's used to capture memories. That's pretty special.
It really is. So it sounds like this is a field for someone with a real passion for tech, a very precise and detail-oriented mind, and maybe even a little artistic side too.
Yeah, you could say that. And speaking of passion, let's talk about how someone actually moves up in this field, because there's a whole career ladder within photographic equipment assembly.
Now that's what I call a deep dive. Where does it all start, and where can it lead you?
So imagine this. You're just starting out. Maybe you finish a technical program. You're raring to go. You want to get your hands dirty. That's where entry-level assembler roles come in. That's where you're really going to learn the basics, get comfortable with the tools, get a feel for how the assembly process works.
Those like building blocks.
Exactly. You got to learn the fundamentals before you can build anything amazing.
Makes sense.
Right. So then, as you get some experience under your belt, you move up a junior assembler role. And this is where you start getting into the more complex stuff. Maybe you're working with those image sensors now, learning how to solder those tiny connections, doing some basic troubleshooting when a subassembly is quite right.
So it's not just about following directions anymore. You're starting to think on your feet a little bit.
Yeah, you're problem solving.
Right.
And those skills, they only get more important as you climb higher, like when you reach that intermediate assembler position.
What's that like? What kind of stuff are you doing at that level?
Well, you could be calibrating entire lens systems, running quality checks, making sure everything meets those super precise standards, and you might even start collaborating with the engineers on design tweaks.
Wait, hold up. Collaborating with engineers. So now you really need to know your stuff.
Absolutely. This is where you need that deep understanding of how it all works together, the optics, the electronics, the mechanics. You might even find yourself troubleshooting a really complicated issue, like maybe an image sensor isn't talking to the processor correctly and you got to figure out why.
Okay, see, now that gets me interested. That's a good challenge.
Right.
So what's the view like from the top? What does a senior assembler actually do?
That's where all those years of experience, all that knowledge really pays off. You could be leading a whole team of assemblers, overseeing those super specialized projects, or being the one who guarantees everything leaving the factory meets those incredibly high standards for quality.
Wow, talk about responsibility.
Yeah.
It sounds like continuous learning is huge in this field.
Oh, it's essential. The guide actually talks about that specifically and the importance of certifications. They're not just a piece of paper. They prove you've got the skills in very particular areas, things like fiber optic alignment or advanced soldering techniques.
So certain certifications can actually open doors for you.
For sure. Higher level positions, maybe even a bump in pay. And here's another cool thing the guide mentions, building a portfolio of your work. That can make you really stand out.
Wait a minute, a portfolio, like what a photographer would have, full of amazing photos.
Not exactly, but it's similar in that it's a way to showcase your abilities, but in this case, it would be images of intricate assemblies. You've done breakdowns of those complex repairs, maybe even documentation showing how you tackled a really difficult calibration.
That's actually really smart. It's like showing, not just telling what you're capable of.
Right. And, we've been talking a lot about the technical side, but you need more than just that. This guide really emphasized soft skills, too.
What does that even mean in this context? You're not exactly giving a sales pitch.
True, but think about it. You might have to explain a complicated technical issue to a colleague, or maybe a client's not happy and you need to troubleshoot over the phone, or you're training new hires. You got to be able to communicate clearly, explain things in a way that anyone can understand.
So you need to be a bit of a teacher, a people person on top of everything else.
Yeah, you could say that. It takes a pretty well-rounded skill set. I think this is a good point to transition into how fast technology changes, especially AI and automation. It's
Yeah.
really impacting this profession, even though it's so hands-on.
Right. It's not like you can automate everything and it's done.
Right, and that's what's so interesting to think about.
Yeah, definitely something to consider. So what does our guide say about how these advancements are affecting this very hands-on field?
Well, it's something that's being debated a lot, even within the industry itself. There's definitely some concern, will robots take over these assembly lines and put people out of work? It's a valid question.
Absolutely. Especially with how much we're seeing automation changing things. So are we all going to be buying cameras put together entirely by robots soon?
Well, thankfully, the guide actually takes a more realistic look. It emphasizes that, yeah, certain tasks will likely become more automated, especially those really repetitive ones we talked about. But the need for that human touch, that human eye, especially for the really intricate stuff, the problem solving, the quality control, that's not going away.
So it's more about humans and tech working together, not one replacing the other.
Exactly. It's like AI might be able to tell you a component is a fraction of a millimeter off, but it's a trained person who can figure out why it's off and
Right.
then use their skills to correct it.
Makes sense. And it really points to what we've been saying all along. You got to be ready to adapt in this field.
Couldn't agree more. And the guide really gets into that in its advice for, people looking to get into this line of work, hands-on experience internships, maybe even just working as an assistant or spending time in a repair shop, getting your hands dirty. That's invaluable.
You can't learn everything from a book, right? Sometimes you just got to do it.
Exactly. And then when it comes to actually landing that job, the guide had some really interesting interview prep tips, even some sample interview questions, which I thought was cool.
Ooh, okay, let's hear one. Put us on the spot.
All right, how about this? Tell me about a time you had to troubleshoot a problem with a piece of equipment during assembly. What was your process?
Ooh, that's a good one. It's easy to say you're a problem solver, but actually explaining how you tackled something specific.
It's all about showing those skills, that adaptability, right? You need to demonstrate that you can think for yourself, get a little creative even when a problem pops up.
Well, this has been fascinating. Big thanks to our listener for sharing this awesome guide with us. And we've only scratched the surface here, so if you're interested in learning more, and we know you are, be sure to check out the full guide. We'll make sure the link is in the show notes. Who knows, maybe you'll be building the next generation of cameras before you know it.